When I was small, I used to play a game, or maybe it wasn't really a game, it was more like an imagination where I would play in the living room and I would have all the toys just lying around on the floor. And then at some point, I would imagine that the flood is coming. So soon there's going to be a lot of water, and the only island where I can stay safe is the couch. And I would get on the couch, but then I would think about what the toys I want to take with me, which ones I want to save. So I would quickly pick the most precious ones or the ones that I really liked. And then the rest, which I didn't care about or I didn't particularly like, I would just leave it there. And I didn't have like all the toys were not pretty. Some of them could be just a can of Pepsi or something like this, but I used for playing. So or a piece of furniture, something like this. Anyway, there were some toys which were my favorite ones, some which were my least favorite ones. And when I would get all the toys that I really liked on that island, on the couch, I was always being bothered by the remaining. What is left? What toys or objects were still there? And they kept bothering me because I left them behind. And then I would start thinking about, okay, maybe I can take something else because I felt bad for leaving it behind, so that because the flood is coming and I don't want to have or to lose anything. So then I would pick something else, something like which I would decide that okay, I want that one to get on board. And then slowly I would pick all the toys or all the objects which I was playing with, and then it would be just like clean living room and me on the couch with all the toys that I had, all the objects that I played with. And only after that imagination or the game would be over. And I just recently came to remember this episode from my childhood, and it made me think about the way how we deal with our emotions or our thoughts or any experiences that we go through. There are definitely some which we like, which we are so happy to have or possess, then we don't even question whether we want them to stay or not. We really want them to be around us. But then there are other emotions or thoughts that we feel like they are not our favorite ones, or they are the ones which we really, really don't want to have, and then we leave them outside of the ship or outside of that island, and we would still be somewhat bothered by it because they are still there and we know they're there, and that would create a lot of suffering. And what I came to realize when I was dealing with my issues with sleep and issues with sleep anxiety, and that I was always kind of in that situation where I would collect and cherish all the good, pleasant moments or experiences, emotions, and I would completely separate myself from everything unpleasant, all the anxious thoughts, some different physical manifestations of hyperarousal. And I always felt that the issue cannot be solved. I always felt the burden of that suffering on myself. And then eventually, somehow it just, little by little it transitioned to that when I just started to accepting things and taking like experience as it is to be on board with me. So I would just look at my anxiety, and I know that I did so many things to get rid of it, and I see that none of those strategies actually work. No special breathing exercises or yoga or some mental reframing or anything. It just doesn't work because I still have that resistance. It's kind of like outside of that island where I am, I felt kind of defeated or surrendered, and I just like, okay, I'm gonna take you with me. So in the moment when I did that, when I just collected that emotion or that experience, and I just put it in the collection of other things, also pleasant ones. And then I would feel some sort of relief. So as I was going through my process of recovery, I would collect more and more of such experience, not necessarily resolving them, but actually inviting them. So whenever there would be an anxious thought or some pattern that I noticed that I'm having, and I would feel like this should not be happening, I would just look at it for what it is, and I would just like, okay, you are welcome. You can stay. You can really stay on where I am. And that doesn't mean that I immediately began to like it. And it doesn't mean that you should be liking it by accepting it. You just realize that it's there. That's the reality. And if we would have certain level of control, we would probably choose to not have it, but we don't have that control. The control that we have is just an illusion that there is something we can do to instantly stop anxiety, instantly stop certain hyperarousal symptom. But we cannot, because that's not how hyperarousal or anxiety works. All the emotions have fleeting nature, and they are meant to be experienced and then they go away. But the moment when we begin to apply resistance, when we separate ourselves from it, when we create this, I don't want this, so therefore you're not part of me, that's what creates this turbulence and this suffering. So by actually admitting or taking on board everything what we are going through, and that could be really everything. For example, when we have anxiety that is obviously it's unpleasant. It is meant to be unpleasant, right? Because that's the body. It's trying to make us do something to get to safety. So we acknowledge that it's not pleasant emotion, but it has a right to be. So we kind of like take it on board with us. And then maybe we will feel like, okay, there is still a desire for anxiety to go away. And suddenly we begin to feel also separation with that desire. We feel like we are not supposed to desire anxiety to leave. That creates another pressure on ourselves. Because something that naturally arises, just like anxiety arose, also the desire to get rid of anxiety is also something that just we didn't create, it just happened. And when we begin to resist that as well, we perpetuate the suffering again. So it's also by noticing, okay, I see I have this desire to stop anxiety and I don't like it, but can you take that desire and just also make it part of yourself, your experience? Because everything is allowed. There is no limitations to what should or what shouldn't be there. And once we have nothing else left outside of that ship or outside of that island, whatever you call it, nothing in the water and everything is there, only then we can feel sense of relief, because there is no longer this resistance. And this is how all those unpleasant emotions or unpleasant experiences, the same as any pleasant experiences, they just become fleeting again. It doesn't mean that, by once, let's say, anxiety comes, it will never leave. It will leave at some point, just like when in some moments we feel extreme joy and sometimes we don't feel that joy, but that's okay, because that's an emotion, and emotion comes and emotion goes. That doesn't mean that, we will be stuck in one particular state forever, but only when we are not resisting it.